is it?
Bum-ba-da-bum. You're locked into the Flagship, an Ole Miss podcast powered by College Corner.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Get your daily Rebel sports fix at the Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com.
Welcome in to the Flagship. I'm your host, Zach Berry. It is time. Week 0 is here. We've got football, college football this weekend. So, of course, that means that we're bringing Hit That Line back. The Legal Gambling Counsel has returned. I know a lot of you have been looking forward to this one coming back as we have a lot of fun. And look, we had a hell of a year last year. We picked a lot of winners. So if you were tailing me and the fellas, you probably had a pretty good return on your investment last year. But before we bring in the council, I want to remind you this show is brought to you each and every day by our good friends at College Corner. 3 locations, Oxford, Ridgeland, Flowood. Go check them out. Get ready for the Grove. And if you can't get to one of the brick and mortar, you can go check them out, collegecornerstore.com. Game 1 will be a whiteout. College Corner has got plenty of white apparel for you to purchase for that game. So we are going to get this show started. We're kind of like a season preview episode. We're not going to run through every game. You know, we're not going to really go deep into Furman or Wake Forest, but we're going to hit the high points. We're going to play the hits for you. We're going to talk SEC. We're going to talk expectations. And then, you know, maybe talk a little limitations, you know, what could possibly be the sticking point for this Ole Miss team that is arguably the best collection of talent that we've seen in Oxford in some time. And the expectations are, and I think the council would agree, the highest that they've ever been. So without further ado, let's bring them in. We've got Austin. We've got Ben here. Gentlemen, good evening. It's another year. How we doing?
Awesome. Well said.
I think so. Let's start here. And before I forget, as you can see down there on the ticker, title sponsor of Hit That Line the past couple years, and they are back. Home Field Apparel. Check them out. Homefieldapparel.com. VIP boxes. They sold out quick, fast, and in a hurry. But they are frantically trying to get them back. You've got some 88, you got some 97 designs in the Ole Miss box. I thought they were pretty cool. So go check them out. If you try to get a VIP box, or if you're just trying to get any kind of merch, whether it's Ole Miss or UC Santa Cruz or Washington, whatever, if you go to homefieldapparel.com, use promo code LastDance24, and you'll get 15% off that first purchase. So we're not going to really touch on the non-con. We don't need to. I don't think there's any roadblocks there at all. Ole Miss will be fine. For me, the task in this offseason has been trying to find the roadblock or find the game that could potentially be a wart for this Ole Miss team. I think just by default, we'll get to Georgia. That's obviously the one that is, I think, could be the only game this Ole Miss team is not favored. Maybe one of two, because at LSU, at night, whatever. That's got to be the easy answer, right? Because Ole Miss hasn't won there since 2008. I think people forget that, but it has to be the LSU game, right? That's kind of the turning point for this team. Is this going to be a real deal, surefire college football playoff team, or will they be sweating and waiting on the committee if they cannot get it done in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, I think the game of the year number right now for LSU is LSU -3. Now, obviously, that's going to fluctuate as the season plays out and we see what LSU has. And look, we can save it for later, but I'll just say people who are expecting natural positive regression for LSU's defense because it was historically bad, I think they're not being logically consistent by not expecting negative regression from LSU's offense, which was damn near historically good, right? If you think the defense can only get better, because how could they get worse? Well, it should also stand to reason that the offense can only get worse because it can't get much better than the Heisman Trophy winner and 2 NFL receivers and a running back, by the way, which is no longer on the roster either. So
it wasn't just a Heisman Trophy quarterback. It was like a historically good passing quarterback, especially down the field. Like he was one of the best deep ball quarterbacks of all time, maybe the best deep ball quarterback of all time.
We may have talked about this on the show last year. I know we talked about it in group text. That was the best performance by a quarterback from a passing standpoint I've ever seen in Vaught Hemingway. Cam Newton was incredible, but he didn't pass like that against us. No. He just ran all over us, and we were terrible. We were a bad team. That performance last year was incredible.
Yeah, correct. Agreed. Better than Burrow's. And they blew Ole Miss out in 2019.
Yeah, because blowout game, but Burrow had 2 interceptions, and they were bad.
Yeah, Daniels rarely ever made mistakes. He did have the fumble early against us. Yeah. It's hard for me to believe that unless LSU jumps like 300 or 400% better on defense this year, that there's not. Their offense is not going to be able to make up enough. Surely, it's difficult for me to see that Nussmeier or whoever the starter is this year is going to have to be a spectacular player, because it's not only him. We hear all the podcasts and all the pundits or whatever talking about how good their receiver room is. Are they going to be able to keep up with what they had going last year? Who they have? Brian Thomas,
and Malik Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors, yeah. More guys.
And Daniels bailed them out so many times with his legs over the course of the season. And so, look, that's another thing. I hear everybody's in love with LSU's offensive line, and I get it. They have 2 NFL tackles. That that's more than half the battle when you have tackles like that, right? Yeah. But then those same tackles last year, and Daniels had to run on how many third downs to keep the chains moving? A lot, very often, including against Ole Miss, and we did not exactly have a ferocious pass rush last year.
Yeah, well, I said it earlier, but it was in the middle of Ben giving a point there, so I may not have heard. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year.
Yeah,
and a lot of that was scrambling. It wasn't design runs.
No, it was not design runs. That's right.
That's not to say that they can't be elite. It's just like, and I'm not saying that this is a fall off like after Cam Newton left Auburn, but it's just one of the. I don't know. I truly believe that Austin is correct in that there's going to be some regression on offense. Their defense is going to get better, but when it comes to an overall win total improvement, it's going to be schedule dependent only. Like I don't think we're going to say, okay, LSU lost 2 first-round receivers and the Heisman Trophy quarterback winner, and now suddenly they're going to go from what did they go 9-3 last year to 10-2 or 11-1? Or to put in perspective, their early line against A&M, I think they're a dog, maybe 3 or 3.5 points. And we all know, A&M may be very talented this year, but they've got a coaching change and a huge hemorrhage of players in the portal.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't think it's talked about enough, but the offensive line, the offensive coordinator is gone. Went to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Weird thing last year was LSU's secondary was terrible.
Awful.
And this is a program that argues for DBU.
DBU.
And they were 92nd in the country in team coverage grade per PFF. Best offense in America, not even close, still lost 3 games because of that.
And by the way, they didn't bring anybody in on the defensive side of the ball either. Now, I know they got Mizzou's defensive coordinator, and coaching matters. I'm not going to deny that. But if you don't have the dudes, how much can the coach actually improve this defense? Let's say they finish middle of the pack, 50th. Is that good enough to overcome their losses on offense? I'm not so sure.
I don't think so. Here's some numbers here. Yards per play allowed last year, 6.1.
That's crazy.
Successful play rate allowed 36.5%. They were really good against the run, but that yards per play number, that is gargantuan.
Yeah.
6.1. It's crazy. Look, they added CJ Daniels, the wideout from Liberty, really good. Xavier Thomas from Mississippi State, solid. I'm not going to say he's going to be great, but he's a good addition. And then they get Jordan Gilbert from A&M, who's just a experienced SEC safety. So nothing really notable on the defensive side, and it seems like they're still slamming their head into a wall about Harold Perkins. They're not putting him on the edge.
Right.
I don't get it. This has
Dude,
been
they brought in an FCS defensive tackle, right? In the spring portal, I think they brought in an FCS guy.
that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. I was on mute. I can't think of where he is from. And it's like Austin P or something. It's like Southeast Missouri.
And look, I like the kid from Liberty too, Zach. And God knows Ole Miss has done well plucking guys out of the group of 5 and, getting good ROI on those players. But I don't think it's a given that you can just expect that at every program with every player. I mean, Liberty plays a really soft schedule. SEC corners are different than the types of corners that guy feasted on at Liberty. They just are. So we'll see. I mean, he may be incredible, maybe the best receiver in the country. I don't know. I'm just saying, banking on him replacing Neighbors and Brian Thomas, I can't go there.
I mean, is he any better than Juice Wells? You know what I'm saying?
No.
JVR Suggs from Grand Valley State.
There you go.
There you go.
Grand Valley State. Yeah.
Is that
that's who LSU is plucking in the spring portal. Like, that does not bode well for their defensive line.
Like Austin said, the biggest question is the offense and how you're going to replace the Heisman Trophy winner and the 2 first-round picks at wide receiver. Even if
and Logan Diggs at running back.
Yeah, and your top running back, the guy that ran for the most yards outside of Jaden Daniels. Even if Nussmeier is good, like let's say he's solid to pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, is that going to be enough to offset the defense? That sure, different coach, so new philosophy potentially. Coaching does matter. We saw that sure as hell matters. Pete Golding got to Ole Miss, but Ole Miss added dudes on that defense.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of goes back to the people argue both sides of this all the time, where it's like, is returning production that is average to bad, does that really matter? Where it's like, oh, well, they got a bunch of guys coming back. It's like, those guys that are coming back sucked last year. Does that really, do you care? I've been beating this drum for like a month or so now. I think this is where Ole Miss breaks the streak. I think Ole Miss goes down there and handles LSU. I think I've told y'all, I don't think it'll be particularly close. I think this Ole Miss team is built to win on the road, win tough games, because you look at the offensive line that's been revamped, and then you've got the weapons outside with Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins, Caden Priest cornerback, but then you add in Juice Wells, you add in Daquan Wright at tight end. I don't think he's getting talked about enough. I think they're going to play them both on the field at the same time. It's going to put people in a bind. And then you got a healthy Ulysses Bentley. You have a really good group of 5 running back in Rashad Amos. And then by that point, you probably think Logan Diggs is potentially ready to go. So, and oh, by the way, Henry Parrish is back. So, I mean, that's a lot of experience, a lot of snaps, and guys that are going to know the deal at that point. I mean, Parrish knows the playbook. Bentley knows the playbook. And, Amos and Diggs have had time to learn it. But I don't know. The only weak spot that I see for Ole Miss is the offensive line. And I won't call it a weak spot. I'll say a question mark. It's like, who's going to be the 5? Because they're going to have a lot of options. I think that's the biggest question mark for me is how will that shake out? And, can they put the best 5 on the field on offensive line?
Look, you mentioned 08 the last time we were in Baton Rouge and to come out of there with a W, right? This current Ole Miss team looks a little bit like that 08 team. I think the talent on this roster is much better, top to bottom. But think about it. You got a gutty, scrappy quarterback, and rest in peace, Jevin Sneed. I think Dart compares favorably to Sneed. Maybe Sneed's arm is a little bigger, probably, but you have elite talent at wide receiver, a guy that can stretch the field. You've got a steady, if unspectacular, sort of stable of running backs like we had in 08, a veteran offensive line, absolute disruptors on the defensive line. If that's the recipe, if that's the formula, I like our chances. And again, the line tells me at 2.5, that's basically pick on a neutral. I think we're better than LSU on a neutral, so we'll see. There's still plenty of time for that market to shape up, but I think it's like we said, this is a grab your nuts and win the game.
It's not impossible to go down there and win. I mean, Tennessee beat them 40-13 in Tiger Stadium 2 years ago.
Yep.
In 22. Now that was I'm not big on this whole night game voodoo stuff, but that was a morning kick. And to your point, Austin, I think, and again, this is nothing more than talking about speaking to them as football players, but I think Jackson Dart is a bigger winner than Jevin Sneed was. And that's not to take away from Jevin. That's to talk about, that's praise for Dart as to how gutsy he can be. I mean, no matter what, it just feels like we're never truly out. Now, this is keeping the Georgia game last year in mind too. But other than that, we're never truly out of the game, at least from the team having bought in to the game. We have not quit, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a Dart thing or just the makeup of this team. And to your point about 2008, I'm not so sure that this roster isn't better in the back end on defense than that one. I certainly don't think, and I appreciate him as a player, but like Marche, I don't know that Marche starts on this team. And
probably not.
I mean, Kendrick Lewis probably does play in the NFL for a while. But at corner, I don't know if those guys – maybe they do, and that's not to speak ill of them. They're great players, all-time players. I mean, Marche had a great Cotton Bowl. I think he had a pick six in the Cotton Bowl and that year. But, there's a lot of similarities. You got Walter Nolan on this team. That team had Parade Jerry. You've got Umami Allen on this team. That team had Greg Hardy. You've got – it's a lot of similarities. Now, that team did have Patrick Trahan, did have Ashley Palmer. It's incredible that team got beat by Vanderbilt. I mean, it is like when you talk about their players, I don't know how that happens. I really don't.
Jonathan Cornell was on that team.
When you talk about how many good players there are, the Florida upset doesn't seem that crazy.
It really doesn't.
I'm not saying that you expect them to win, but there's very much a man-on-man type situation.
Was it 6 turnovers against Vandy that year? Something like that.
Yeah, probably.
Crazy. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people point to last year's Florida State team as a good comp for this Ole Miss team because of all the transfers, experienced quarterback, deep. I mean, we're almost 20 minutes into this podcast, and we just brought up Walter Nolan and Prince Umami Allen. I think that front seven is probably the best front seven Ole Miss has had since 2014, and then after that, it was probably 2008. Right?
Probably.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Ashley Palmer, Patrick Trahan, and then I brought up Jonathan Cornell on that 08 team. Well, now you all of a sudden look up and you've got Pooh Paul, who was Arkansas's leading tackler, played a lot of ball. You've got
Kari Coleman.
Kari Coleman, who's played a lot of ball. You played a lot of TCU
Daughtery.
for Ole Miss last years. Yeah, you got TJ Daughtery now. I mean, they got some dudes at linebacker. You got Suntarian Perkins, who's kind of a hybrid, is he linebacker, edge, whatever. And there's a lot of talent in that front seven. And then, oh, by the way, JJ Pegues is back. Jared Ivey's back. Xavier Harris is back. There's a lot of buzz about true sophomore Demarius Brown. Then a lot of people are talking about how good Cam Franklin and William Eccles have been. So, it's a good problem to have for Ole Miss where you're trying, like I mentioned with the offensive line. You got to find the right mix. You got to find the right group. I mean, I imagine Pete Golding will probably be doing some hockey line changes on defense just because they're going to have so many guys. They're going to want to keep them fresh. But, yeah, it's not crazy to say this Ole Miss team could go 11-1.
No, I don't think that's crazy.
No.
You mentioned the skepticism at linebacker. I think some of that's fair, but a good front four, an elite front four, protects average linebackers. You just fill the gap, stick your nose in there and make a play. I think we've got guys that can do that. Y'all remember some of the names that have played for us over the years. I'm not going to go through them out of respect for them. I mean, I'm an Ole Miss fan. I love what they did for the program, and they did the best they could in most cases. But the guys that we've trotted out there for the last 5, 6, 7 years, a lot of those guys would not even sniff starting at linebacker on this roster. They wouldn't even get PT, get any reps. So I understand that relative to the other parts of the defense, they may be the weak link in the chain. Maybe, I guess we'll see. But I think that only speaks to the strengths of the other parts of the defense. Safety corner, a really deep, and as Lane Kiffin described it, elite defensive line. I just think that covers for a lot of flaws. If you have a guy like Nolan, like Princely, like Ivy, like Piggies, like Harris, like Brown, like some of the freshmen that could disrupt a game plan, you don't need Poopall to be Lawrence Taylor. You just need him to be an average SEC linebacker, which he's been his whole career. And I don't have any reason to think he's going to suddenly not be now that he's in Oxford.
Yeah, playing behind a better D-line than he had in Arkansas, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I anyway.
Outside of LSU, what's the other one that sticks out?
I think it's got to be Oklahoma, because there's so much potential, I think, for variance for Oklahoma. You can find opinions all over the board. A lot of people think they're going to have one of the best defenses in the country, not just in the conference, but in the country. A lot of people are in love with Jackson Arnold, or at least the potential of Jackson Arnold. They've got weapons outside. They brought in the transfer wide receiver from Purdue, whose name escapes me right now, but a really good player. They've got Deion Burks. Yeah, he's going to be one of the best in the conference, probably. And, their schedule is brutal. So by that point in the season, could some guys be eyeing the draft or the portal? Maybe. But, they open with Tennessee at home. I think they get Tennessee. That's Oklahoma's first SEC home game. Nico, true freshman, coming in or I guess redshirt freshman, coming into that environment. I think OU probably starts out more strongly than we would prefer as Ole Miss fans. And by that point in the season, let's just hope maybe there's been some tread knocked off those tires. I think they got to be number 2 on the list.
Well, fortunately for us, we catch them. They play Tennessee on the 21st, then they go to Auburn on the 28th. Then they get a bye week, and then they play Texas.
Yeah.
And then they play South Carolina, and then they play us. So they have a 1, 2, 3, 4. We're the 5th of 5 straight SEC games there against Oklahoma, and we get them at home. So now it may be a tough spot for us too, because is that coming off of the LSU game, or when do we catch them?
I believe so.
We may have a bye before that, right?
Yeah, and we have a bye. That's a win. That's a bad spot for Oklahoma. It's a schedule win. I mean, I'm not saying that. I am saying I think Ole Miss has a better team than Oklahoma this year, but that's also a good spot on the schedule for us. Whereas, like we talk, not to belabor the point on LSU, that's a bad schedule spot for us there, and great for LSU. The Oklahoma game is opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the pretty potential to be a pretty volatile team week in, week out because of how like Jackson Arnold's uber talented, but I mean Arizona quickly figured him out. And I know it's just a bowl game, whatever, but first start he had 5 turnover worthy plays in that game. I will say one of them was not his fault. I believe it was a tip pass, a juggled pass, and they picked it off. But yeah, he looked like a freshman, standing in the pocket way too long. He didn't get out, didn't get rid of the football, made some bad throws, tried to do too much. But yeah, I think that, how's he going to look at that 5th week in that stretch? And then, you got the body blow theory where first year in the SEC, week in, week out, playing that schedule. What's that team look like at that point in the season, which would be right at the end of October, where it's that's when you're kind of figuring out, okay, this is what this season's going to be.
Well, let's look at it. You talk about the body blow. Let's think about Oklahoma for a second. That we would be the 5th of 5 straight SEC games where they would have played Tennessee. Now they're used to playing Texas, South Carolina. Okay, let's talk about South Carolina. Everybody's saying that they're likely to be down this year. We don't know, but let's just say that they're down this year. Okay, would you, with that in mind, would you rather play South Carolina or would you rather play Colorado? Would you rather play South Carolina or would you rather play Kansas? Kansas is going to be decent this year. Arizona State, like, my point is, if you put South Carolina, who's going to be down in our league this year, into the Big 12, are they a top 3 team in the Big 12? Are they a top 5 team in the Big 12? Are they a top 3 team in the SEC East if it still existed? Like, probably not. I mean, the point is like, this is a different – Oklahoma is a great, all-time great football program. Of the 2 that are coming, and it may just be a timing issue, I think they suffered the most with the move. Now, they're going to financially benefit. And maybe in 10 years they figured it out by that point. They become the new Alabama. I guess that's possible. But in terms of just immediately translating, I'm not finding that. They've had a lot of Heisman winners in the last 10 or 20 or 30 years or whatever and won a lot of football games. But, I mean, I could see – and I'm not saying that Oklahoma is going to be a bad team. I just don't know that anything about them suggests that they're going to be better than an 8.5 win team in this conference right now. Like, I think 8.5, 7.5 to 8.5 is more likely than the 9.5 or 10.5 to 11.5 that they were taking advantage of in the Big 12, because an Oklahoma season was, okay, we got to play Texas, which that game is weird every year, not to go all Egg Bowl type, lingo on it, but that game is weird. You never know who's going to win it. So they have to play the Red River, and then they either have to beat Baylor, Oklahoma State, or TCU when one of those teams is good, because nobody else in that league ever gets hot and becomes good. But like Oklahoma, this is a team that nearly lost to Tulane at home last year or the year before. And so, I mean, this is not a –
They did lose to Kansas last year.
Correct. So and I'm not trying to, again, say that they're coming in and going 6-6. I just don't know that they are going to be like leaps ahead. Who's to say Oklahoma is anything different than Auburn in 5 years? Like,
I
is
wouldn't
that a
bet on
better
it. Yeah.
program than Auburn in 5 years? Maybe
not in this conference. I don't know. I don't know that they can be better than Auburn in the SEC. Now, historically, they're better than Auburn, sure, but in this conference,
Correct.
I don't know.
I'm not talking about the 80s, Switzer, and I get it, man. They're awesome, like great, like top 5 football program ever, probably college football. But like they come into this league in 2024, and now you've got to deal with us, and you've got to deal with, even when LSU's down, they're still going to have better athletes than you. Even like LSU has better athletes than Oklahoma. They have better recruiting ground territory. Yeah. They're going to be better than Oklahoma. Now, they may not have better quarterbacks always, but they've had 2 really good ones in the last 5 years. And LSU is what would you consider them, a 9.5 win team right now, 8.5 win team? When I'm saying like a 5-year average is, I'm putting Ole Miss in that category too. Like we'll say Ole Miss is a 9.5 win team, LSU's a 9.5 win team, Auburn's Auburn's probably 6.5 win team. But point is, like, I don't think Oklahoma's coming in like they dominated the Big 12. They were like a college football playoff contender every year. I don't know that that's happening here. I mean, it would not surprise any of us, I don't think, if Oklahoma played a game in Lexington and lost.
The market agrees with you. Their win total this year is 7.5.
Yeah, there you go.
7.5. Again, credit to them. Like you said, they've won the games that they should have won. They built their blue blood rep, in my opinion, on a lot of cupcakes. But you still have to beat those teams, and they did that. They did that. They dominated their conference. They dominated decades at a time in college football. But that was not in the SEC. It was not. No. So we'll see going forward. And again, I'm not burying them as a program. They will be good. There will be years, and hell, it could be this year where they win 10 games, 11 games, and they contend. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be.
They're going to make college football playoffs. But days of them having Heisman quarterbacks every other year or in the conversation, that ain't happening anymore. dog.
And the
Like,
days when you could circle Texas, and of course they will continue to circle Texas. Don't get me wrong. Red River will always be Red River. But you can afford to circle Texas and highlight it, underline it, double stamp it, whatever, when you have Baylor before and Texas Tech after. It's different when you have Bama before and Georgia after.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my big question mark for Oklahoma and Texas coming in is, we've talked about this before where it's like, hey, no longer are you going to Ames to play Iowa State and then you turn around and then you get sleepy Baylor at 11 a.m. at McLean Stadium. No, like now you got to go on the road to Sanford Stadium and play Georgia, and then you got to turn around and go to, Davis Reynolds and play, maybe they're terrible, but it's still a road game at Arkansas, and that place is weird. At least in my opinion, for the first 2-3 years, it's going to be everyone's Super Bowl for Texas and Oklahoma because of the brand recognition, but also you're the pledge, like you're new, like people want to get after you. So,
I mean, this year they have Tennessee on September 21, at Auburn the next week. Okay, I mean, let's be honest. We make fun of Freeze.
Auburn will be
in the
foaming
plains,
at
and
the mouth for that.
they're going to get that ass whipped. Is what's
for
going
sure.
Jordan Hare, regardless of the head coach, is still crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a loud place, and so
look, that's
like
going to be. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's like Williams-Brice, like South Carolina. Regardless of how good they are, it doesn't matter. The crowds show up.
That will be their welcome to the SEC moment for Oklahoma, because I think they're going to beat Tennessee at home. I really do. But I think on the road the next week, you're flying high. You got that first SEC dub going down to Auburn. I think it's going to be an oh shit moment for that fan base. Like they're going to be like, oh my God, if this is what it's like on the road every week. This is not. They ain't the Big 12 anymore.
Then they get spanked there. Then they have to play Texas, and let's just, even if Oklahoma wins at Auburn which I think will be, it's going to be a sobering reality of like, dude, you host Tennessee, then we have to go to Auburn, and this is not an expected great team this year, right? Like, what about the year where you host Tennessee and then you got to go to Georgia, and then you come back at home and play LSU, and then you go back on the road to Florida back to back to back to back to back. It's like, this ain't Lawrence or Manhattan or whatever. Like, no, you're going into 90,000 person, or even in Oxford. So it's hard to come to Ole Miss and win. We never lose at home now. Think about how many home games we've lost under, post-COVID Kiffin. I mean, none. We lose to Alabama at home.
When State has a pulse, it's not easy to win in Starkville.
No.
Yeah.
That's one. Yes.
Kiffin's had the ball in the air to win the game against Alabama, and then lost a weird egg bowl in the rain. Had a good play call to go for two. That's to win
one inexcusable loss at home.
Yeah,
that I can remember in the last 3 years.
But
and a pretty critical drop by an NFL wide receiver.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. True. Yeah.
Oklahoma potentially could start 0-3 in the SEC.
Oh yeah.
Could lose to Tennessee. Could lose at Auburn. Could lose to Texas. And then you're licking your wounds and you're having to circle the wagons against South Carolina. And then you got to go to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And then you get a break with Maine. Then you got to go to Missouri. Then you host Alabama. Then you go to LSU.
And let's not forget the Auburn game. Auburn is likely to be 4-0. They're going to have started their year with 3 non-conference wins. And then they host Arkansas, which they'll likely win. And then they'll be 4-0, and we all know how Freeze gets when the revival is going. It's going.
Well, he'll be dancing on a chair with a couple snakes, and they'll be fired up.
Is that a night game? Do we know? OU at Auburn?
No, TBD.
TBD.
Okay.
Yeah, Texas is afternoon because it's always afternoon. Everything else is TBD in the SEC.
See, look, that's another thing that I thought was an advantage of the Oklahoma game being at 11 for Ole Miss is all of our Texas students are used to cheering against Oklahoma at 11 a.m. So, it works out perfect.
Yeah.
It's going to be look, I hate don't get me wrong, I don't mind kick times or whatever. I would prefer night games, but if we're going to be the early kick, we got to own it, man. You just got to, and we did a good job last. We've done a good job the last 2 years, like the Kentucky game a couple years ago. Kentucky brought a big crowd, but the students, the fans showed up and were loud.
Yep.
Yeah.
A&M last year too. That was a day game that the crowd influenced that game. I mean,
I don't mind them, but I'm old now. Like in college, I wouldn't be thrilled with it.
No, I get it. If, especially like you said, if you're a student, like I get wanting Georgia at 6. I get wanting OU at 6. Like, you want to enjoy the day.
Well, what is it? The student tickets, was it like north of 12,000 were sold or something crazy?
Like 13,000 or something, right? Something crazy, yeah.
Let's get to these other two important games. We brought up South Carolina. Let's talk about South Carolina. So, I don't know, man. You lose Spencer Rattler, who I don't think that guy got enough credit for the shit that he had to go through, and he dragged them to wins. Lenore Sellers takes over under center. Maybe will be good, but the guy's only thrown 4 passes in his career. You do add Rocket Sanders. That's going to help. That's a really good running back. He's played a lot of SEC football. They get Jared Brown, wide receiver from Coastal Carolina, that was really good up there with Grayson McCall. And then Kyle Kennard, an edge guy from Georgia Tech that Ole Miss was trying to get. But, yeah, I just – outside of, Space Odyssey and Sandstorm and it just being wild and crazy, and you kind of expect Ole Miss to maybe come out a little flat, that's a game that I think you just throw your helmet out there and you're like, in 2024, this Ole Miss helmet that we roll out there is better. And that's just a road SEC game that you just have to win, 31-13.
Here's
what
my
that game's going to be. Go ahead, man.
Y'all know me. I'm a schedule guy. South Carolina gets basically a full month to prepare for Ole Miss. They open up with Old Dominion, which ODU can be tricky. They go to Kentucky, and then they play LSU. But after that, they get Akron at home, a bye week, and then Ole Miss. So if they're going to treat the Sunday after LSU, they're starting to prepare for us, which is September 15th. They don't play us for 20 days at that point. So they're going to have 3 full weeks to prepare for Ole Miss while we host Kentucky the week before. Now, we have a 4-week ramp up to Kentucky, so we should know everything, frankly, about Kentucky and South Carolina by the time we play South Carolina. But in schedule spots, that's not a great one for us, and it's a really good one for South Carolina. Now, I think that the wheels could be wobbly because they could lose to both Kentucky and LSU, but nevertheless, that's an interesting schedule spot for us.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing too. It's like the schedule sets up better for South Carolina there, but it's kind of where we talk about it all the time. We pick games. I'm of the opinion I look at 2 spots. I look at quarterback and I look at the trenches. Ole Miss has the better quarterback, and Ole Miss has the better O-line and D-line. So that's just, again, you just got to go win that game. When you're a college football playoff team, you just go win those games.
I think
we also
if South Carolina
road for them, by the way, they go.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Ole Miss at home, at Alabama, at Oklahoma.
Texas A&M.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, strap up. I'm skeptical of really there may be like 5 programs in the country that I think can line up and do old school smash mouth football, like road grade you with bigger NFL offensive linemen, NFL backs, an NFL quarterback. There are like 4 or 5 of those programs that could still do that. I'm not even saying there are 5 that actually still do it. I think there are 4 or 5 that could do it. Michigan did it last year en route to a national championship. They're going to try to do it. And also cheating. I think South Carolina is going to try to do that this year with lesser parts. I don't think they're going to be able to line up and road grade us. I think they're going to try, but I think Sellers is not really a downfield threat. I don't like their weapons on the outside. I think they're going to turn around and hand the ball to Rocket Sanders 30 times and try to win 27-24, something like that. I don't think they can do that. This is not Bama of the mid-teens. This is not modern-day Georgia or Michigan or this year's iteration of Ohio State. I don't think that approach is going to serve them well. It may be the only option they have. If you don't have the tools, you don't have the tools. But I think they're going to try to
scratch everything I said. If they're doing pro style or whatever you're calling, like no, that doesn't work.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they come out throwing the ball 60 times a game. I just don't see it with Sellers at quarterback. And they went and got Rocket Sanders for a reason. Now, in today's game, I think it's silly to spend NIL dollars on an SEC back with not much tread left on the tire, who is injury prone and at times can be overweight. I think that was a silly investment on their part, but it's not my money, so it doesn't matter what I think, right? I expect them to do that because I don't think Sellers has any options out wide, and I don't think he's really a good downfield passer. If he is, we have not. Let me put it this way: we haven't seen him do that yet in his career. So if they're expecting to just line up and run over us, I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think you're going to limit a Lane Kiffin offense with our weapons to like less than 35 against this defense.
Yeah, the big thing for me with South Carolina is the offensive line. I know how bad it was last year. I mean, Rattler ran for his life all year.
Yeah.
Fourth lowest graded unit in Power 5 last season.
Oh, God.
Brought in transfers.
All units?
Huh?
All units? So that includes like fourth lowest period?
Yeah.
Who was worse?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Air Force's receivers? Like, I mean, what,
They brought in some transfers, but none of them are expected to start as of this moment. So you're bringing back dudes that weren't good. So that is a big question for me. The other one that's fascinating is Nicholas Harbor. Just freak of nature.
Right. Yeah.
Like probably could run track in the Olympics. I've heard from tons of people that the big thing with him is questioning whether or not he actually likes football. Where he has all the physical ability to be a monster, but does he really want to do it, or would he rather just run track? Because look, he could be a weapon because he's a 4.3 guy. He's huge. He can go and jump, all of that. But yeah, I mean, that's the question. Like, does he really care enough to play football? I've heard that from tons of people.
By that point in the year, we will know.
Yeah. How much tread is left on Rocket Sanders' tires? They also brought in Oscar Attaway from North Texas. So there's someone else there to help spell Rocket Sanders. But yeah, I mean, they're probably, it's kind of funny, but with Rocket Sanders, they're probably going to basically run a little bit of what Arkansas did with KJ Jefferson with Sellers.
Exactly.
Big guy, 240 pounds. He can run it. They're probably going to do a lot of zone read stuff and try to, chew the clock down.
Exactly. That's exactly what I expect. So, look, I expect worst case scenario for us is that it looks a lot like the 22 Texas A&M game, where we kind of had to sweat more than we would have preferred. We ended up playing a little ball control ourselves and salted them away. But look, I think that A&M roster is better than the South Carolina roster.
Oh, yeah. And mentioning the offensive line and what's one of Ole Miss's strengths this year? Defensive line.
Yeah, D-line. Yeah, for sure.
So that's where you win the game.
And
let's play that game real quick. Unit by unit comparison to last year. All right. Quarterback. We're the same or better. I mean, one more year for Dart, right?
Right.
Running backs, step back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that, or it's a wash just because.
I'll call it a reduction. We'll give it a reduction.
Yeah. Offensive line
should be better.
Receivers
step
better.
Up. Big one.
Better.
Yeah.
Tight ends better.
Better.
Defensive line
better.
better. Linebacker.
Better.
Who started
All right,
at linebacker for us last year?
Exactly.
I really can't remember. Like I'm sitting here like
Yeah.
I remember 2 years ago.
I'm
Who
trying
started
to,
last year?
now I'm trying to figure it out.
Like
We-
Chance
we-
Campbell and Mark Robinson and those guys were playing in like 20.
Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste.
Jean-Baptiste played a good bit, yeah.
You had
Man, that's crazy. I can't remember.
Ashanti Sistrunk,
Sistrunk played a lot. He played
Ari
well.
Coleman,
Mm-hmm.
Monty Montgomery played a good
Montgomery
bit.
played a little bit, yeah.
Tyler Banks got into
I would
games.
have never. And it, I mean, respect to them, we went 11-2. So it's not. This is no disrespect at all. But it's kind of like Kiffin said after the Georgia game. We got to look different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we didn't get to it, but secondary better.
Yeah, I think you could. Let's divide it up there. Corner, I think, is probably even because look, Walton and Prince were pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But I think
Safety, I think better.
there's a legit chance that you could have two guys that go in the NFL in Isaiah Hamilton and Amos from Alabama.
Amos, yeah.
Also, don't get lost on like, and this is not because the personnel is different or the staff is different, but the coaching will be. It's another year in Golding's system. Like I remember that interview where he was like, "Guys, that was, let's say," and I don't want to paraphrase this wrong. Y'all probably heard it, but like if the book is 1,000 pages, we had like 10 covered last year or whatever. It's like there's a lot to the system that we didn't even implement because there wasn't enough time to, and there may not be enough time to do it all ever because of the portal. But it's just another year of him being here in Oxford.
Yeah. So safety's better. I think corner wash. So I guess for people wondering why, like, you're not hearing a ton of negativity out of Ole Miss's camp, I think we just answered the question. Like, that's why.
Yeah. It's very
because we're better at almost every position.
It's very
except
frustrating
running.
when I hear people are like, "Well, nobody's saying enough negative. Nobody's being objected or saying enough negative things or whatever." And I'm like, "Sure, but nobody. I don't know an Ole Miss fan who's calling for now. The players are, and I want them to strive for this, but no sensible. I don't know that anybody in the country really goes into a season, except for your 85% or Alabama fan that says, "Oh, we're going to win the national championship or bust." Like nobody's saying that. Like I don't know that many Ole Miss fans expect to make the national championship. I think everybody, and I think every school should be this way, even if you're a top 4 team, which what is Ole Miss, number 5 or 6, just expect to make the playoff. And then once you get in the playoff, then like weird things happen, man. Like that's just part of it. And I don't know a single Ole Miss fan who would say, yeah, I mean, if we made the playoff and got bounced, that'd be a disappointment. Now, me and y'all talking, if we make the playoff and we match up with a G5 opponent, or
we got to win that game,
and we lose, I'm going to be disappointed. But short of that, I'm probably not going to be. I mean,
but look,
it's a good year.
This is a gambling podcast. We're a favorite to make the playoff.
Correct.
That's why there's not a lot of negative shit to talk about.
Yes, that's right.
We're one of a handful of teams who are favored to make the playoff.
Yes. What are our odds? Like 5th or 6th best in the country or something?
Yeah.
To make the playoff?
We're minus 130 as of like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So you have to bet $130 to win 100 on Ole Miss to make the playoff, not the other way around. And think about how many college football teams there are. Like you would think it would be good odds if we were plus 700. We'd be like, well, I mean, we got a chance. We slip up and upset some people.
You're talking Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and then I think we're next.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Ole Miss and
probably
Alabama.
Even odds with Alabama, and that's look, that's what you want to be. Like if you've got the same odds as the Tide, then
what a world. All right, final bullet here on the docket in terms of season preview, looking at games that are important. This one's incredibly just fascinating to me because we talked about it last week and just how crazy the schedule is for Florida. This game has the potential to be very weird, not only because of just the forced narrative of Lane Kiffin to Florida that will be the buildup all week, because I do think at this point Florida will be reeling. But I mean, just the roller coaster of a year that could happen in Gainesville, where you start. Let's look at the schedule. Could start
So
out.
some handicapper that I follow said, and I take his word for it, that it's the hardest schedule since they've been tracking schedule difficulty. So the hardest schedule of all time, like literally the hardest schedule of all time.
Yeah, the PFF has it the second strongest schedule behind. I'm trying to.
Dude, there's not a tougher schedule than this one. I don't care who they put in front of them. The Buffalo Bills.
SC is harder.
Yeah. Okay.
Just because of the Big Ten. Okay, whatever. Okay, here's and we're gonna have some fun here. Opener, Miami. Let's say they win. Samford win.
Yeah.
A&M in the swamp win. Mississippi State win. UCF.
Is it
just for this? Just
Florida,
for this.
the University of Florida is going to go to Mississippi State and get beat.
Okay. Okay, but I'm just saying, just for this.
And we saw that video of that handoff up the middle. We saw with the state.
Okay, just for this exercise, Florida could start 4 or 5-0, or maybe 6-0.
I mean, let's just give them every game then. I mean,
this is
Graham Mertz to the Heisman, baby.
Look, just an exercise, because look, Graham Mertz was pretty good last year.
No, he was.
Like I had to go back and look, and his stats were good.
Yeah.
But look, just for this exercise, we'll run through the schedule and do a real pick. But maybe 5-1, maybe 4-2. Then it's at Tennessee, Kentucky, at Georgia, at Texas, home against LSU.
Georgia's at home, or it's Jacksonville, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Game. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
And then close with Florida State. So could start out 4-1, and then you end up going 4-8.
Yeah.
Or you go 5-7. Like, it's wild of just, yay, awesome start. Billy football's here. Oh shit. No, we're going 5.
Without a bye week, they go Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State.
And we have a bye week before them, right?
Oh, yeah, we're going to beat Florida. This is not Zach called it fascinating. A lot of people were saying that. If you put Kentucky's logo on their helmet, it wouldn't be. And that's about the same talent level they have right now. They may be a little bit better than that. People are calling them talented, I guess. But, like, at that point in their schedule, no. They'll be a whip dog. And here's the thing about the Kiffin stuff. Austin, I'll let you talk. I know you want to say something. Let me say something.
No, I was just going to mention, you referenced it earlier, the body blow theory that we've talked about for years, where, you play Alabama and your team's broken up for 2 or 3 weeks afterward. You have to dig into your bench, see what kind of depth you've developed, because players are literally knocked out of the game, right? Ole Miss avoids that this year. We avoid a lot of physical teams, actually. The most physical teams in the league, arguably, except for Georgia. But, the A&M, Bama, Texas, Auburn, we don't play in those teams. And Florida does, all in a row without a bye, as you just mentioned. Texas, Georgia, LSU, us, and then Florida State to bookend it. I mean, that you talk about a body blow, they may be who knows who's going to be starting at that point in the year for them. If the wheels have fallen off, are their guys going to dig deep to save Billy's job? Or are they thinking, I got to get ready for the draft? Or, considering their options in the portal. This is like body blows on steroids. I mean, that stretch run is brutal.
So you want to agree. You want an Ole Miss-centric or slanted view of the Kiffin to Florida situation. That's inevitably going to happen. All right. He's probably not going to do this because he never says anything about, or he never puts to bed rumors ever. And I don't know that maybe it is intentional. I don't know that the guy appreciates how much people hang on his every word during those situations. Maybe he does. You'd be crazy not to, but maybe not. If Florida is 4-7, or what would they be that means they would be 4-6 when they played us, because then they would go 4-7 against us and 4-8 against Florida State. If they are 4-6 when they play us, and Ole Miss is, let's just say, what is that? 8-2 or 9-1. Okay, with Florida and Mississippi State left. That is not a situation where, just my opinion, if you're coaching football to win championships or to make the playoff or whatever, that is a scenario where you go like, guys, stop talking about me going to Florida. I'm not doing it, because that may break up a lot. Like, you're not going to flirt with the 4-7 program or 4-6 program at that time when you are ranked 4th in the country and trying to make the playoff, and you allow that. Like, where I'm going with this is, like, think about the 22 Arkansas game. It's going to be one thing if we're 6-3, right? Mm-hmm. If we're 6-3 and they're 4-6, or 6-4 and they're, or 7-3 and they're 4-6, well, yeah. I mean, I think that he's probably going to flirt with and possibly take that job. But like, if we are 9-1 and we are like, I mean, we are like mobilizing to be the number 5 seed or the number 3 seed, I think they're finally put to bed this year. I truly believe that, and I know you don't stake your life on one season, but there's going to be, again, and I'm telling you, this is an Ole Miss slanted. I can make the case for Florida too. I think that Kiffin's next move, regardless, this may be a hot take, is to the NFL. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think that. Why is he going to go rebuild another? I mean, we talk about Florida being a great job. It's been a great job. And the popular thing is like, elite talent pool or whatever. 2 coaches have won there first.
Only 2. Yeah.
Only 2. Say, is it a great job?
And you have to play Georgia every year, and they are not going away.
And Florida State.
And you play LSU every year, or I don't know if they're going to be the permanent, and you play Florida State every year. And so in a lot of years you play Miami. And so we're talking about, that's a hard place. And those people 8-4 with those 4 losses, they ain't working there. And so because Steve Spurrier won there in 1996, they would expect Lane Kiffin to do it too.
And dude, let's not forget, UCF is in a power program now. Or, I'm sorry, a power conference. Now, I'm not saying UCF is they're not going to overtake Florida, but like, they can make life more difficult on Florida.
And they may have a better coach than Miami does. Mm-hmm. And so where I'm, and probably a better, at least more proof of concept with their coach than
for sure.
And so, so point is like, that may not be the job he wants. Now, it may be in the location he wants, although Gainesville is not like, people think Florida and they think immediately, oh, we're going to the beach and going up. No, that's not Gainesville.
Georgia. This is not 38, bro. This is not 38.
It's basically Georgia.
I just think that he will be here until the NFL, and this is an Ole Miss slanted view. I'm breaking. Ben is saying that Ole Miss job's better in Florida. No, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. I don't know that it's much worse than Florida now, though. And so, especially given expectations, money, who you play every year, and where they're set up. Like, Ole Miss is kind of like a well-oiled machine now. Lane Kiffin at 40, whatever he is, 8, 50, I don't know how old he is by now.
49, yeah.
Yeah, he's 5 years into this job. Is going to go do that again at Florida? Like, I think that the next move's like the Tennessee Titans or Tampa Bay. Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't blame him for that. Like, everybody wants – Nick Saban left LSU for the NFL. I would slap him a butt and be like, thanks, Lane. I appreciate it. It was fun. Next guy.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we did the fun exercise. I think Florida is starting at least 2-4.
Here's the thing, man. I think I'm higher on Florida market is. Like, I think they're going to be okay. It's just this schedule is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
You can look. You open with Miami.
I think they beat Miami.
Okay, I would say Cam Ward could light you up,
or he could fucking lose, man. Like Cam Ward, like he didn't carry the team at Washington State, dude. Like there were games where he looked lost up there.
I'm just saying, could lose to Miami, beat Samford, could lose to A&M.
I think they do lose to A&M.
Could lose to Mississippi State.
I think Ben's already going out on that ledge. I can't do that. I cannot give State that.
I don't think they will, but I'm just saying you could. I think UCF beats Florida.
Man, look, if that happens, do they fire him that Monday before Tennessee?
At that point, if that happens, the people there are going to be clamoring for DJ Lagway.
Yeah.
They're going to be begging to play the freshman. And then,
but since you mentioned him, that's been used as a reason. He has been used as a reason for why Florida may not move on Napier, because they don't want to lose Lagway.
Yeah,
that they're thought to be a package deal.
Yeah, because it's him and the name escapes me, but his guy from Louisiana that's at Florida now is like basically the closer for getting Lagway.
Exactly.
You could lose in Knoxville. Kentucky's always weird with Florida. You're going to get whipped by Georgia. Probably going to get whipped by Texas. LSU probably going to lose. You're going to get whipped by Ole Miss. I mean, at that point, like probably whipped by Florida State. That's a bad. I mean, just after 5-7 a year ago.
I can see them being 7-3 going into Ole Miss. You may get them there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me see.
Miami win, Samford win, A&M at home win, at Mississippi State win. That's 4-0. UCF at home win, 5-0. Go to Tennessee and lose, 5-1. Kentucky at home, 6-1. 6-1. Florida, they're feeling it now. They play Georgia, lose 6-2. Go to Texas, lose 6-3. Beat LSU at home 7-3. It's not that crazy.
And here's the thing. If they lose out, they're keeping him. You can't fire him with winning 7 games against this schedule.
No, they won't fire him at 7-5. No, not with that. And they likely I think they could get to 7-5 with that, like with that run. I mean, that's just winning the game. That's just beating A&M at home and Kentucky at home. I mean, we're talking about just holding serve at home and winning at Mississippi State. You could get to 7-5 with a lost Ole Miss at home.
In those games you mentioned, they won't be dogs of more than 3.5.
No.
In the games you mentioned, LSU, they won't be a bigger dog than 3.5. At Tennessee, maybe 3.5 dog there, maybe. A&M, they might be favored against A&M.
Folks our age, sorry, I got my dog here. It's storming and he's like freaking out. To folks our age, Florida coming to town may feel like Super Bowl-ish, but I don't know that it's going to like 19 and 20-year-old college students. Like what I'm meaning is like when Florida used to play at Mississippi State, they would be geeked out of their mind and tear the goalpost down if they won and all that kind of stuff. Now, I mean, when's the last time Florida was good? Tim Tebow's older than me. I mean, he's got to be close to 40.
Yeah.
08, 09.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had a little bit of a flash with Kyle Trask and
here's the thing. Mullen was a good fit there. Mullen was a good fit there. They just didn't like the fact that he wouldn't commit to recruiting as much as,
He was winning 9 and 10 games.
He went to the SEC championship game.
Yeah, go back and look at his records there. He was good. The problem for Florida is they have a built-in loss now because they play Georgia every year. And used to, they could split that game. Right now, they can't split that game. So they're starting 11-1, and then they have to play Florida State and sometimes also Miami. I mean, that you're setting yourself up. When you play 2 losable non-conference games, you're dumb. Like if trade those games with Samford and Northwestern State, they go 7-5 automatically because they're going to win 4 non-conference games. They'll beat Kentucky at home. I mean, we're going to get to 7 at that point.
Yeah,
and then maybe you're safe. But instead, they're playing like the Kansas City Chiefs week 1. The Las Vegas Raiders week 12, and sandwiched in there, they got Georgia and Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So Dan Mullen went 10-3, 11-2, 8-4, and then 5-6.
And the wheels fell off at the end. But man, I get it. He's not a great recruiter. He never commit. He hates recruiting. Notoriously hates recruiting. But like, what would Florida give for those 10-win, 11-win seasons?
No, he did go 10 and 11 wins with Jim McElwain's players. Those weren't Urban Meyer's players.
That's true.
What I'm saying is they weren't recruiting lights out.
Blue chip. Yeah.
That was an average roster.
I don't think Napier survives losing to A&M, losing to State, losing to UCF, and losing to Tennessee.
No, look, if he loses.
I don't think that'll all happen, but I mean, that's all bang, 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 like right in the middle of the season.
Dude, if he loses to Miami, A&M, if State is close, and
Yeah.
they lose to UCF, he's going on Monday.
And you got Tennessee right after that.
Yeah, look, I think it's more likely they beat both Miami and A&M as lose to both of them. Both
I
home
think they're
games.
going to beat Miami. I think they're going to beat Miami.
More likely to beat Miami. I think A&M is
And-
going to be weird.
Is Mike Elko is that's his name, right? Is he going to
Yeah.
like be in like they're going to be in a bunch of close games? That he's not like
Yeah.
a wide open offense type guy, is he? So
No, and
it's
then he
similar
hired
to
Colin
Jimbo,
Klein.
man. Like I'm
Yeah.
not calling him Jimbo, but what I'm saying
Yeah.
is, dude, you get in those offensive systems where every game's 3 points, you're just going to law of averages.
Shit
You're going to
happens.
lose some of them.
Yeah, right. No, he's a former defensive coordinator. I mean, he's a defensive gutted out, grinded out type of dude, and he hired Kansas State's offensive coordinator, Colin Klein. They're not going to open it up. I mean, they're going to 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and he's going to play defense. His defensive line may be the best in the conference. Really good defensive line, but
Florida,
I think A&M.
A&M.
I think that's about all they've got, though.
That's with losing Walter Nolan. Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you've got they picked up Nick Scorton from Purdue, who's a stud.
And he was the best in the Big Ten, best pass rusher in the Big Ten.
Solomon DeShields, linebacker out of Pitt, who's really good. They got Will Lee from Kansas State, who's a really good corner. It's all on Wegman now. Max Johnson's gone. He went to North Carolina. Was okay in 2022, really good in 2023, and then fractured his foot. So, how is that going to be?
A&M also just lost their starting running back, right? Ruben Owens.
Yes. And he's a stud. So, losing that offensive line is going to be interesting because you lose Chase Pasanis and Mark Naboo Jr. Those two guys will be changing positions. So Basanis is still there, but like they were really good at offensive tackle a year ago. All three of the projected starters on the interior were sub 65 on Pro Football Focus. So that right there is the glaring weakness for A&M. And then, your running backs, your 5-star running backs out. It's going to be a very Mike Elko team with like just defense, and just like grind it out.
Gut it out.
Again,
let's you want to touch Georgia briefly?
Yeah, we need to.
Okay. We'll do that and then get out of here.
We're going to be Georgia.
So the question is, how much of the gap have we closed since last year?
Man, they're just so good, but like, Bowers is gone. McConkey is gone. That's not to say they don't have studs.
Rah is gone.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there was a lot into. I don't know. I mean, the gap is big. I don't know. I think that game was bigger than what the gap is.
Agree.
I mean, we beat Georgia 45 to whatever in 2016, and we were trash by that point. So that was a way bigger beatdown than that score was. Like we were beating them 38-0 at the beginning of the third quarter.
Yeah. A couple things about last year. We talked about this going into that week. We talked about this, on the gambling pod, like early in the season. We were their biggest home game that year.
Yeah.
Like far and away their biggest home game.
Yeah.
Night game. That was the first time all season they had been healthy. All season. They get Bowers back. They get a lot of guys back. Offensive linemen back. By the way, we were down 2 starting tackles by the third series of the game.
I was going to say the first series, they're down.
Yeah. Pettis didn't even start, right? He didn't even play. And then Jade Williams goes out with a bum ankle, 2 series in. Suddenly we had to reshuffle the deck. Now, again, like Ben, I'm not saying it wouldn't have been a 6-point game with those guys in the game. No. I'm just saying everything went right for them. Nothing went right for us. So I assume we go into that game. You could probably find a game of the year line right now. What do you think? Georgia -7?
I was going to say like 6.5.
I hope it's
It might be closer to like 9 or 10.
I hope it's weirdly 6.5 before 7.5 because I want Vegas begging people to take
for the
Georgia.
Georgia money.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think it's between 7 and 10.
Yeah.
Probably because let's see what they look like by that point. I mean, that's late in the year. We play them like November 9th, 10th-ish.
Yeah, November 9th.
And that may be a night game. Can it be a night game?
Yeah, I think so. It's a flex, right?
Yeah, flex is 2:30 or night, so there's opportunity there for that.
And there's a real chance that depending on what everybody else does in the country, that could be a 1 versus 2 game.
It could be.
Undefeated Ole Miss hosting undefeated Georgia, college game day. I mean, Oxford will burst at the seams. You will have to get to town on Tuesday for that game.
Let's look at it this light. Georgia at some point is going. I'm not talking about become 9-3, right? But they're going to eventually start dropping one game a year. I mean, Nick Saban's Alabama teams went 11-1 and still won the national championship, and so there's got to be a half a game regression at some point, or a full game regression. I just don't. I don't know that we have the. I don't know, man. They were so much bigger and faster last year. And guys, we were good. We went 11-2 and we spanked Penn State in the bowl game. Say what you want about who played for them or whatever, but we won that game 38-17 or something. I don't know what the final was, but it's going to be tough, man. They're just so good. Carson Beck does not turn the ball over. That's what stresses me out. Is that dude is not. He is so careful with the ball and accurate. Yeah, and I mean Jackson Dart's the same way, but Beck's doing it with they're just loaded.
There's really no clear weakness on this team, which is it's wild. That's just the depth that's been built there. And you add Trevor Etienne, you get Benjamin Urasek from Stanford, a really solid tight end, and Colby Young from Miami at wideout. Now Javon Dumas-Johnson's gone. He was a big part of that defense in the middle, and then Marvin Jones, the guy from Florida State, the edge, is gone. But
that's one game where I wish we still had Quinjon.
Yeah,
because to beat team think about the 14 and 15 Alabama wins. Okay, even with we got some bounces. I mean, Alabama got some bounces in 14, the face mask touchdown, that sort of thing. But 15, we got some bounces. Now we caused them, but we got bounces nonetheless. Other than the tip six, we didn't cause, but the fumbles on the kickoff, all that kind of stuff. We had matchups we could exploit. Laquan was better than Cyrus Jones in college, and so we exploited Cyrus Jones with him. And we had other great receivers. Do we have a matchup against what concerns me against this Georgia team? And I'm talking about with the players we have now. So let's say Juice Wells and Trey Harris and all this. Trey Harris is a fantastic college receiver. And this isn't to single him out, but I'm using him as an example. Can Trey Harris dominate a Georgia corner? Can Juice Wells, that it's going to take something like that happening for us to win. And I'm not saying Trey Harris has to, or Caden Prescorn has to, or Juice Wells has to. You get my point. There's got to be somebody. And I'm not saying Laquan was the reason we won. Evan Ingram was a huge factor in the 14. And that was a big deal in the 16 game. He was an X factor against Alabama because those linebackers could not cover him. He was too fast. And so, and Saban would challenge the strong safeties like Landon Collins and covering Ingram. I mean, do we have a matchup, a mismatch outside that we can push the ball down the field or move the ball down the field in Georgia? I just don't know. I mean, I genuinely, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful Trey Harris can be that guy, but or that Juice Wells or Deion Smith maybe he's the guy that comes in and stretches the field against them.
At home, I think the goal is you have got to keep it within a one-score game heading into the fourth, at least within 10 points. Because then it's, hey, all bets are off. You're at home.
Game on, yeah.
Like let's do it. But
this will be Kiffin will disagree because he'll say analytics or whatever. They are the one team that I really wish we didn't go fast against. Like, I wish you could shorten the game as much as possible against Georgia, or at least like after you get a couple touchdowns, like once you get in the second quarter, let's rest our guys and run, 5 minutes off the clock in a drive and maybe kick a field goal and say, you know what, let's get into the halftime and recoup and play a 2-quarter game now. But otherwise, I mean, dude, our drives are like a minute 14 seconds. We're 6 plays, minute 14, 81 yards, touchdown. That's awesome, but it gets the ball right back to Carson Beck with 13 minutes and 49 seconds on the clock, and they go 4 minutes and score, and then we have to do it again, and we're matching blow for blow against NFL guys all over the field. That's the only game I'll say that about.
Juice did have a touchdown catch against them last year.
Yeah,
just saying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean he may be, and Trey Harris may be. I'm just saying like. Those guys, it's similar to like you play Saban. You got to get some kind of mismatch somewhere because 22 on 22, nobody else in the country looks like it.
Yeah. That could be a game where it's like maybe Daquan Wright gives you a matchup.
Now they do, and if we want to talk about, I'm not going to leave them out. Let's go schedules. They play at Texas on October 19th. They get a bye. Then they play Florida, and then they play us. And so in the Florida game –
and Tennessee after us, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that, like, there's something here. But, I mean, getting them right after the world's largest outdoor cocktail party isn't a terrible spot, especially if Florida can give them a scare. And let's be honest, coaches who are reeling, they're going to look at those rivalry games to try to muster some fan support. And Florida can't – I mean, I'm not saying that this Florida team will, but that game's been weird in the past.
Yeah. Look at this run. Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, Texas, Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee. I mean,
it's tough.
I mean, the best team in the country, but that's still hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many teams make it through that run undefeated in the country?
Now, somebody in Georgia has got an insight in the SEC office. They get a bye before they play Alabama after they go to Kentucky. But they have to go to Alabama, but they get a bye that week. And, well, never mind, it's Florida. I was going to say they get a bye before Texas, but they get a bye before Florida and Ole Miss. So those are – look, they don't need any help. I'm being facetious, but, a bye week before their biggest game their biggest game is going to be at Alabama. It's not coming to
Auburn. Yeah.
All right, it's gonna be fun.
And before you say anything else, Zach, we need them to beat Alabama because we don't need them to have the one-loss urgency coming to Oxford.
Yeah. That'll
Tim Tebow, this will never happen again type urgency.
Yeah, they'll have the hair pushed behind the ears if that's the case. It'll be on. We'll have another episode later this week. We'll do our win totals. We'll do some picks for that, and then it'll be week 1 before we know it, and we will jump in and start doling out some winners. So, do any of y'all have it handy? What we were last year? I can find it really quick, but last year we finished 91, 72, and 1. Easily the best year we've had.
I mean, that's an objectively really good year.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And then that was, there were some weird weeks too where we had a lot of us were just over.
Yeah.
And we've typically been pretty good of we hardly would go over. We would at least get one. But yeah, 91-72-1. Like that's crazy good for picking college football.
The thing we avoided last year, knock on wood, we avoided those weeks where like all of us would go over. We're like 1-3. Like we avoided those.
Yeah, I think we only had one.
Any good team totals this year before we get off?
Man, I like too many. You mean season win team totals? Yeah.
Yeah, there's some.
We've talked about a couple of them. Like LSU 9.5, crazy town.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Are you
get
going
into that.
over or under?
Under
9.5?
Yeah, that was the same total they gave Jaden Daniels last year. How can this team get the same win total as the Heisman Trophy winner last year? Like how can that be the case?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna give you those picks and more later this week. But yeah, we're back again. Appreciate College Corner bringing this show to you each and every week, and we appreciate Home Field Apparel being the title sponsor of this show every week. Last Dance 24 is the promo code. Go to Home Field, get you some merch, and then be ready for those VIP boxes to come back. And when they do, you got to jump on it. The Ole Miss stuff is pretty cool. So that'll do it for this edition of Hit That Line. As we are back for the 2024 season, we will have another episode later this week. We'll have more Flagship podcasts. Ben Garrett will have his Talk of Champions. We'll have some Ivy League. We'll have more coverage, fall camp, all that stuff, recruiting. So stay locked in, omspirit.com. For Austin over there, for Ben, I'm Zach. This has been Hit That Line as part of the Talk of Champions Network. Until next time, we're out of here.